Okay, let us begin. Tonight we're going to continue with the halachas of Netilas Yadayim, and we're going to move from Netilas Yadayim at the end of this year. We're going to start the Netilas Yadayim. We were in Siman Kuf Nun Ches. We're going to move to Siman Kuf Nun Tes at the end of it, which deals with talking about this specific kalim, which you can use to wash your hands. So we left off with a very interesting discussion about if you're supposed to wash your hands, you're supposed to wash your hands if you would eat a vegetable that's wet. And so we said that the Shulchan Aruch says that you should, and Mishnah Berurah agreed with him that if you had an apple that became wet, that you should wash your hands without a bracha before you ate it. But then we said that it's not really the minhag of Ashkenazim nowadays. We don't really do it. And that's how we concluded. And so then it's interesting that the way we start off this week is in Siman Hay, Sif Hay of Siman Kuf Nun Ches. The Mechaber writes, Shulchan Aruch writes that Hanotel Yadav Lapiros Harei Zeh Migase Haruach. The one who washes his hands before he eats fruit, he's an arrogant fellow. You shouldn't do it. So at first glance, it's all confusing. You just told me, Shulchan Aruch, that in Sif Daled that I should wash my hands. In Sif Hey, you're telling me that if I wash my hands, I'm an arrogant guy. So the difference is that in Hey, right, for us, either way, it's not going to make such a difference because we don't do it. But in Sif Hey, he's talking about just regular fruits which haven't become wet. And according to everyone, you'd say that you don't need to wash your hands on that. So you're saying that's what's arrogant. It's interesting though that the Mishnah Berurah comments on this, that why is it considered arrogant is Shemara Asmo Shu Medaktek B'mitzvos but Ma'ashein Tarach. Right? Why is it arrogant? Is because he's kind of portraying to he's saying, look at me. I'm this guy who's super careful about mitzvos. I'm so careful that I'm even following mitzvos that I don't even need to do. You don't need to wash your hands before you eat a fruit that's dry. Nevertheless, I'm doing it. So that's considered arrogant. You're not supposed to do that. But the Mishnah Berurah kind of backtracks a little bit that he says, nevertheless, if one wanted to wash your hands, if you wanted to wash your hands before you ate a vegetable, not because you think you're obligated to, just because you want to make sure to be clean, and you're not actually obligated to do it. You're not chayav, so you would be able to do it.
So you can wash your hands before you eat the vegetable, or you shouldn't?
So he says. So the Mishnah says you can.
You can, but not ritually. So, like, wash your hands with like soap, but you shouldn't do like you're doing the Netilas Yadayim.
Yes. So I think they quote in the deer shoe. He says, yeah, you should do it. I don't know if you should wash it. Maybe you should not wash in the same exact way. But yeah, you for sure should not. He says, it's totally permitted if you want to. But maybe it's because the Ramah says dafka shenotla mitar chayis, notla mishum nikiyas. It's only if you're doing it because you think it's an obligation, that's a problem. But if you're doing it because of cleanliness, then it would be mutter.
What if you're by yourself? What if you're just by yourself? There's nobody around, and now you want to wash your hands because of it. So now nobody else can look at you.
I don't know. Is it gase ruach if even if no one's around? Is it maras ayin a problem? So even the chari chadarim, I think we say it's a problem. What do you think?
I think what he's trying to say is you have other things to work on first before you start doing this. I think that's what he's trying to say. Before you start washing your hands for vegetables, make sure you're not running through your regular davening and say every bracha with kavanah.
Right. I think that's probably the message here. You did say though that also another reason why you shouldn't. The Mishnah Berurah says another reason why for vegetables and fruit you really don't need to be washing is because what's the normal way to eat a vegetable? You don't really hold the broccoli with your hand when you eat it normally. You usually use a fork or a spoon, he says. So that's also another reason why you don't really wash your hands there. But that's Sif Hay in the Shulchan Aruch. Then we move to Vav, which says that one who is drinking, you don't need to wash your hands at all. And so I guess that would apply. I think the chiddush there is that even if you're drinking wine, or which could become truma d'oraisa, you don't need to wash your hands at all. Then he talks about case where let's say you washed your hands. Let's say you washed your hands just because you want to wash your hands to be clean, or some people are very careful to wash their hands in the morning. That's a chiyuv, but also to wash. Some people are very careful to wash their hands after they come out of the bathroom. So let's say you wash your hands after you came out of the bathroom, and you did it in like the normal way that you didn't say bracha, but you did in the normal way that you wash your hands even before you're eating bread. And then a minute later, someone says, you know what? Here's a bagel for you. You need to wash your hands. You need to wash your hands again. And not only that, would you be able to say bracha? Because right now your hands are totally clean. Then it's been less than a minute. You wash your hands; they're totally clean, and now you have bread in front of you. So Shulchan Aruch says you cannot make a bracha. You cannot make a bracha, and also you would need to wash again.
Okay, wait. I have a question. So you come out of the bathroom, and you're going to wash your hands out of the bathroom, but you know right when you wash your hands, you're going to eat bread right after that. So do you say Asher Yatzer or Al Netilas Yadayim first? Which one do you say first?
Meaning, you washed your hands. You said Al Netilas Yadayim?
You're coming out of the bathroom, and you're washing your hands. You're washing your hands for two reasons. You know you're washing your hands because you just went to the bathroom, and you're washing your hands, but also you're washing your hands because you want to eat the bread. So which bracha should you say first? Al Netilas Yadayim or Asher Yatzer?
Oh, I think for sure Al Netilas Yadayim. I think for sure Al Netilas Yadayim. Because we're going to see in Yudalis, right now we're in Zion in the Simon, but we're going to see in Yudalis that there's specific requirements about when you're supposed to make the bracha as it relates to washing your hands. So, and also I don't think there's a time limit on when you can say Asher Yatzer, right? You could wash your hands, you could start eating, and then you can say Asher Yatzer afterwards, right?
There's no time limit on Asher Yatzer? Not even like 3 hours?
I think you could say it as long as you haven't gone to the bathroom again, you could say Asher Yatzer. I mean, we have to look that up to make sure that's correct, but I believe that's true. Or maybe even if there is a time limit is certainly within a few minutes that you're free to say it. That's what I would think. What do you think?
I think that's right, but you can wash your hands and have in mind I guess you can wash your hands and have in mind both the washing the hands for after going to the bathroom and Al Netilas Yadayim at the same time.
Yeah, I don't know what the problem would be for that, especially because it's not a chiyuv to wash your hands after you go to the bathroom.
Question is, if you normally have to wash it do you have to wash it an extra time?
Oh, if you usually do 3 times for after the bathroom, do you have to wash 3 times?
Yeah. Okay, keep going.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, okay. Anyways, so, but the Berurah says, what's the best thing to do in this case, right? Where you wash your hands, you didn't have it in mind, right? So you didn't do it exactly the way for Netilas Yadayim, and then someone gave you a bagel. So what are you supposed to do? So the Berurah says, what's the best thing to do? So to stick your hands in a place where you'd be obligated to make it Netilas Yadayim, make yourself chayiv, and then you can wash your hands again and say a bracha on it, because now you're obligated to wash your hands because your hands are dirty.
And isn't that a problem that you're forcing yourself to say a bracha? It's like You don't know whether or not you should make a bracha on the dessert, so you bench and then force yourself to say the bracha. I mean, isn't that a problem?
So that's a good point, and Dirshu makes the same point, and they say hatam she'im ban hagazu mishum gorem bracha she'in estricha. What's the reason? Aren't you causing yourself to make a bracha And they say we're gonna get into it. We're gonna get to it eventually. So I guess we too will get to it eventually. I don't know exactly where they put it. They say it's in Siman Kufnun test, but Siman Kufnun test is very, very big. So eventually, hopefully, I will find it. But until now, I haven't actually seen it. But they do address your point, so we will get to that point. I don't know if that satisfies you, but that is.
Yeah, Baruch Hashem.
Okay, so you're referring to the question of the deer shoe, and they say don't worry, we're going to address it. Okay, so now what about this is very interesting. Shulchan Aruch says Mi shahaya b'midbar o b'makom sakana ve'ein lo mayim. Someone he lists two things. He says someone who's in a desert, midbar is in the desert, o b'makom sakana, or he's in a place of danger, ve'ein lo mayim, he doesn't have water. Pater mintilas yadayim. He doesn't need to wash his hands at all. So if you just read the Shulchan Aruch, what do you think he's saying? I think he's giving you two heterim, right? That you could either be in a midbar, and a midbar, I would think also wouldn't mean you need to physically be in a desert. You just need to be in a place where there is no water, because right, that's the inherent quality about deserts. There is no water. So if you're in a midbar or in any place where there's no water, you can't find water. Oba makom sakana, or you're in a place where there's danger. Okay, that's a different case. Ve'ein lo mayim, and you don't have water. So it's possible you don't need to Netilas Yadayim. So that sounds like a really good heter. It sounds like a really good heter. If I don't have water, I'm totally patur from Netilas Yadayim. But the Mishnah Berurah says hold on. He says not so fast. He says that he quotes La Medal B'midbar. What does he say? Hu gam kein hasami pnei sakana. No, that the only reason why it's mutter, the only reason why you don't need to wash your hands in the desert is also because of sakana, because of danger. There's danger that relates to when you're in the midbar, right? We know that you say hagoma for four things, and one of those is if you're in the midbar. It says right, there'd be danger for you to go somewhere else and look for water. So really the only reason why the midbar is your putter is because it's danger. So how come it said midbar and sakana? So you should have just said the whole thing is just because the reason is because of sakana. That's the only reason. That's the only heter that you have. If you're in a place of danger, you don't need to wash your hands. So he says naka midbar b'snei atzmo, that he wrote midbar by itself. Lashmin d'sta midbar le'olam makom sakanahu. That really any midbar, sta midbar, is a place of danger. So there's only really one heter here. There's only really one heter here, and that's if you're in a place of danger, you don't need to wash your hands. But midbar, the fact that there's no water on its own would not be a heter, is what he's saying. That's how I read it. That's how I'm reading it at least. So then they quote in the deer shoe. So they say, so even though it's obvious that you don't need to put yourself in danger to wash your hands from Netilas Yadayim, it's a derabanan. Achidish kanhu k'mo shekatz v'shulchan aruch haraz shebemakom sekana lo gazu klal Netilas Yadayim. That in place of danger, there is totally no decree about Netilas Yadayim. Why is that relevant? V'lachein af al pi shelo yistakim bekaf shelo yochol ad shevolo mayim o sheyachol lachol dvarim acherim sheinam tzrichim Netilas Yadayim. Basically, you can live, right? It's like you're not gonna die. But you don't have water, but you're not going to die if you don't eat this bread. You could survive. You have vegetables, you have other stuff that you don't need to wash for. You don't need to, if you're in a place of danger, you don't need to withhold yourself from eating bread. You can eat bread. It's totally mutter. There's no even chiyuv here. There's no even zera of Netilas Yadayim at all if you're in a place of danger. That's the chiddush. That's the only chiddush here. But for you to say that if there's no water, you don't have to do Netilas Yadayim, that's not true. That wouldn't be the case. That's what they're saying. And then, furthermore, Mishnah Berurah says even though you're totally patur from Netilas Yadayim, so this is the famous heter, right? That you're in the car, you don't have water. So what do you do? Take a napkin. So Mishnah Berurah is quoting this here, but he's only quoting this in the case of sakana, in the case of danger. That you can also. I always thought that it meant that you should take the napkin and basically hold the bread with the napkin, right? So you don't touch the bread itself. But the way that they're explaining it here is that you should actually put the napkin in your hand. It's kind of, I mean, I guess it's effectively the same thing, but the napkin's really going over your hand, so your hands don't touch the bread. But he's saying that you still, even though it's putter in a case of danger, you still would need to do the napkin trick. Okay, and then
he's saying put the napkin on your hand.
Yeah, he says put the napkin on your hand.
Meaning wear gloves.
Yeah, you wear gloves, or if you don't have gloves, you put the napkin on your hand, and then everything you touch already has a napkin in it, as opposed to wrapping the bread really in a napkin, and then pushing down on the bread.
Okay, yeah. We like this.
A little difference there. Okay, and then next we move into it's always nice when the Shulchan Aruch gives us a little bit of mussar and chizuk, that he says, he says very important, you need to be careful about Netilas Yadayim, be very careful. Anyone who desecrates or who doesn't mistreats Netilas Yadayim, you don't see any treating it seriously. I don't need to wash. It's fine. So what does he say? It comes out very, very, very harsh against him. Chayav nidoy. You're obligated to be excommunicated. You're going to be excommunicated. You want to know you want to help people become poor? He says you're not chayav. You don't treat Netilas Yadayim seriously. The nekar mina olam. And then he says in Yud, afal pi sheshir beruviyit. Even though that, what's the minimum amount of shear that you need the minimum amount of water that you need in Netilas Yadayim would be a reviyis, which is not that big of a shear. It says Yosef litol b'shefa. You should make sure to add more. You should pour with a lot of water. The Rav Chisda said, I was careful to wash with a lot of water. Because of that, he says I basically became rich. I became rich in this world because I was very careful to put a lot of water in my washing cup. Yes, and that's why I became wealthy. And the Mishnah Berurah says, let's say someone is very careful about this, right? He washes with a ton of water. You see, he's not getting rich. Probably something else is going on where he's not so good at. But he says it's for sure true that if you're careful to wash a lot of water, that is definitely a close to become more wealthy. Yud Aleph, he says, Shulchan Aruch says, we'll go through it slowly. First, you might be confused. But Shulchan Aruch says, Mevarich kodem netilah. Before you wash your hands, you should say the bracha. It's not our minhag, but that's what Shulchan Aruch says. Shekol mitzvos mevarich aleim over las yasan. Generally, what do we do before we perform a mitzvah? We make the bracha. Okay, before I shake a lulav, for example, I say the bracha on the lulav. Before any mitzvah I do, I say the bracha before I perform the mitzvah. So too with Netilas Yadayim. Before I wash my hands, or when should I say the bracha? I should say before I wash my hands. What do? We say the bracha after we wash our hands. So the Shulchan Aruch continues, V'nagu shelo levarich ad achar netilah. So why is our minhag like this, right? That we say the bracha after washing our hands. We should really say it before. Mishum depamim shein yadav nikir. Because sometimes our hands are just not clean. Mipnei kach mevarchim aleim achar sheshif yadav shekvar yadav nikir. So that's why he says that really, when should you wash your hands? So we wash our hands, because we make sure to do more than one wash. We do 2 washes. So after you washed once, you should wash your hands before you go over it again. Because at that point, your hands are clean, right? Your hands are clean at that point, but then you're going to also wash again. So he says that's the perfect time to make the bracha. But the Ramah, he disagrees. He says, Gam yachol levarich aleim kodem hanikos. He says, no, you could also make the bracha at a different time, which is before you dry your hands. Shegam hanigov min mitzvah, because also the drying of the hands is really also part of the mitzvah. Umikre over l'asiyasa. He says that it would still count as over l'asiyasa, meaning you'd still be making the bracha before you actually do the mitzvah. If you make the bracha after you wash, but before you dry. And so that's basically the two reasons, maybe the Shulchan Aruch reason, which is kind of like you don't really have another choice. And it's two parts. It's Shulchan Aruch saying you don't really have another choice, so that's why you make the bracha after you wash your hands. And also you're still like performing the mitzvah. You feel like performing the mitzvah when you're after you put your hands out, after you wash once. It's still really part of the mitzvah. And that would even include drying too, is what the Achronim explained, that even the drying too is still like part of the mitzvah. So that's why you're allowed to make it. But the Ramah saying something different. He's saying that no, that really the ikar mitzvah, the main part of the mitzvah is the drying. So what would be the nafkamina between the two? So the Ramah quotes the imshachach levarich ad achar nigav. Let's say you forgot nafkamina. We'll do two nafkaminas. That let's say you forgot to make the bracha. Let's say you washed your hands, you dried your hands, and you didn't make the bracha. So meaning let's just get this down, because a lot of people get confused about this. That when are you actually supposed to make the bracha when you wash your hands? You're supposed to wash your hands, then say the bracha. You're not supposed to be drying your hands yet. You're not supposed to be even saying the bracha while you dry your hands. You're supposed to first make the bracha, and then you're supposed to dry your hands. Okay, but let's say you did this. Let's say you washed your hands, and then you dried them, and you forgot to say the bracha. So so we have two reasons, right? So according to the Shulchan Aruch reason, who says that it's we didn't really have any other choice. You couldn't really say it beforehand, and it's really also part of the mitzvah. So the Shulchan Aruch reason would say it's no problem. You're okay. You can still make a bracha. But according to the Ramah's reason, right, which is that the drying is the ikar part of the mitzvah, and it's still over las yas. I mean, you're still saying the bracha before you perform the mitzvah. So if you were to dry your hands and you didn't make the bracha, you wouldn't be able to say the bracha anymore. It's too late. You already finished your mitzvah. And the Mishnah quotes that the Taz was actually machmir, like they said. If you dried your hands and you didn't say the bracha, you can't say the bracha anymore. But then he says that lemaisa ein lenon kain, right? We don't paskin like the Taz, that we're mekel, and the Ramah even says himself that we're mekel to let people say bracha even if they do it the wrong way, which is that they dry without saying the bracha. Another nafkamina that they have is that what happens if someone spoke, right? We know we're not supposed to wash in between. Sorry, we know we're not supposed to speak after we wash and say the bracha, and before we eat bread. And people are very careful about this. But what's more important is usually they quote from the Tlach. He says, "Mami od shkati beseudos shafilu halomdim in nitarim bein netila lebrachas netilas yadayim beyoser hema nitarim lahapsik achar birchas netilas yadayim lebirchas amoti b'tau to biyada." It's a big mistake to be more careful about not speaking from before you eat bread, right after you wash and made a bracha, before you eat bread, than not speaking before you made the bracha of Netilas Yadayim. That a lot of people think, okay, I washed my hands, but I can still be in my conversation. I didn't say the bracha yet, right? And then only after I make the bracha I have to be quiet. No, that's way worse. That's way worse for you to do that. You can't for you to speak in between could be a big problem, right? According to well, it depends, right? According to the Shulchan Aruch, who said that it's all part of the same mitzvah. So the Shevet Levi says that since you spoke, right, you did a hefsek in between your drying, in between drying the hand and saying the bracha. So your continuation of performing the mitzvah. Now you spoke before you made the bracha, so now your mitzvah is over. You can't say a bracha anymore. You would actually need to rewash your hands, says the Shevet Levi. But according to the other reason which we quoted, is that according to the other reason that we quoted, which is that of the Ramah, right? Which is that the drying is the ikar part of the mitzvah. So then there would be no problem, and you would still be able to make a bracha even if you spoke in between. Okay, so let's just finish off in the last minute that we quote from. They also Berurah quotes, which is interesting. They says והעקים מסתבר דהדינים מבית יוסף, דין למחות בימי שירצה לברך כל המטילה יודע שירד נטילה. So the Berurah says the halacha. He says if someone has clean hands and he wants to make the bracha before he even washes his hands, which is, you would think it's a little bit unheard of, we don't protest if someone wants to do that. And I heard a story once that someone said that Rav Shechter, they actually saw him say the bracha. They saw him say the bracha of I don't know if this, I can't confirm this is true, but they saw that he made the bracha before he even washed his hands. Like the Shulchan Aruch said it, and like the Berurah says, it's someone who wants to be careful. We can't protest someone who does that. But for us, I think that's not really the minhag that most of us do. Maybe ask your Rebbe, see what your Rebbe tells you. And then just to finish the siman, that we finished by saying that you should make sure to dry your hands, because drying your hands also fully removes the toma. And then also we say that you should, the Mishnah quotes that you shouldn't dry your hands on your shirt, because they'll make you forget your learning if you dry your hands on your shirt. So make sure to dry your hands on a towel. And they also quote that one who washes their hands in a mikvah, if you wash your hands in a mikvah, which we'll get to later, that you don't need to dry your hands either. Okay, and so next week we'll talk about Kufman Test, which talks about the different vessels, different kalim, which you're able to wash your hands with.